Blood dripped from Zara Williams' wrist as security dragged her through the terminal. The 17-year-old honor student remained eerily calm despite the brutality, her dignity a stark contrast to flight attendant Rebecca Whitman's racial slurs caught on dozens of recording phones. The unjust removal from Aurora Airlines Flight 1824 seemed like another case of discrimination until Zara finally received her one phone call. "I need to speak with my father, Marcus Williams, CEO of Aurora Global Airlines," she stated calmly, watching shock spread across every face. Would justice finally be served, or would powerful forces still manage to silence the truth? Before we begin this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you believe in standing up for justice against discrimination, hit that like and subscribe button to support more stories exposing the truth. Zara Williams had always been exceptional. With straight A's and perfect SAT scores, the 17-year-old senior had earned an interview at MIT's prestigious aerospace engineering program. What made her stand out wasn't just her academic brilliance, but her resilience in a world that constantly underestimated her. As the daughter of Marcus Williams, the quietly powerful CEO of Aurora Global Airlines, Zara could have had everything handed to her on a silver platter. But Marcus had raised her differently. Success without earning respect is hollow, he'd always told her. This philosophy led him to keep his ownership of the airline remarkably low profile, even using different family names in business settings to avoid accusations of nepotism or special treatment. Zara had grown up understanding that her achievements should be hers alone. At Westlake Academy, her predominantly white private school, Zara faced daily microaggressions that taught her patience and composure. The surprise on teachers' faces when she outperformed expectations, classmates asking to touch her natural hair, or being mistaken for the only other black student in her grade, these small indignities had armored her for the world. During their last conversation before her trip to MIT, Marcus had warned her about the prejudice she might face traveling alone. "The world won't always see your brilliance first, Zara. They'll see your skin. Remember who you are, especially when others forget." She had nodded, thinking she understood, but nothing could prepare her for what would unfold at Baltimore International Airport. The first sign of trouble appeared at the check-in counter. While white passengers moved smoothly through, the agent scrutinized Zara's ID for nearly 5 minutes, comparing her face to the photo with suspicious glances. "Is there a problem?" Zara asked politely. "Just doing my job," the agent replied curtly, finally printing her boarding pass with visible reluctance. Zara noticed other agents processing passengers with efficient smiles, a courtesy she hadn't received. Taking her boarding pass, she headed to security, already calculating how these delays might affect her carefully planned schedule. The security line brought more unwelcome attention. "Random selection," the TSA agent announced loudly, pulling Zara aside for additional screening while dozens of white passengers walked through unhindered. Her carry-on bag was unpacked item by item, her natural hair patted down roughly under the guise of security protocol. Standing with arms outstretched in the scanner, Zara maintained her composure, remembering her father's advice to pick her battles wisely. When finally cleared, she checked her boarding pass while reorganizing her belongings, and noticed something odd, a small red mark in the corner that hadn't been there before. Years of observing her father's business had taught her to recognize patterns. This wasn't random at all. Someone had deliberately flagged her for extra scrutiny, creating obstacles at every step. Her heart raced with the realization that her journey had only just begun, and already she was being targeted for nothing but the color of her skin. The boarding process for Aurora Airlines Flight 1824 moved efficiently for most passengers, but not for Zara. Despite holding a first-class ticket, she was stopped for yet another random security check at the gate. The agent rifled through her carefully packed bag, disrupting her organized notes for the MIT interview. When Zara finally boarded, she made her way to seat 3A, her first-class seat by the window. Before she could settle in, a commotion caught her attention. A white businessman in his 50s, who would later be identified as Edward Keller, was arguing with another passenger several rows back. Flight attendant Rebecca Whitman, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and practiced smile, rushed to mediate the situation. "Sir, if you'll just show me your boarding pass, I can help sort this out," Rebecca said, her voice dripping with customer service sweetness. The businessman produced his ticket with an entitled flourish. "I paid for first class and that's what I expect," he declared loudly enough for the entire cabin to hear. Rebecca nodded sympathetically. "Of course, Mr. Keller. Let me see. You should be in seat 3A. Right this way." Zara watched in disbelief as Rebecca led Keller directly to her assigned seat. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I believe there's been a mistake. I'm assigned to seat 3A, Zara said politely, presenting her boarding pass. Rebecca barely glanced at Zara's ticket before dismissing her. "There must be some error with your boarding pass. Mr. Keller's ticket clearly shows this is his seat." The smile that had been so warm for Keller turned frigid when directed at Zara. "But my ticket shows the same seat assignment," Zara persisted, maintaining her composure despite the growing knot in her stomach. Several passengers had begun filming the interaction, sensing the brewing conflict. Rebecca's voice sharpened. "Young lady, you need to stop causing trouble and delaying our departure. There are plenty of seats available in economy." Zara stood, her ground, reciting airline policy she knew by heart thanks to her father. According to Aurora Airlines policy, when there's a seating conflict, both boarding passes should be verified against the passenger manifest. Rebecca's eyes narrowed, dangerously at being challenged. "I'll call my supervisor," she snapped, reaching for the cabin phone. Brian Mitchell, the chief purser, arrived moments later, his tall frame looming over Zara. Without even checking her boarding pass, he sided with Rebecca. "Miss, we need to get this flight moving. We can offer you a middle seat in economy, or you can take the next flight tomorrow." The injustice was staggering, but Zara's MIT interview couldn't be rescheduled. Swallowing her pride, she nodded silently. As she gathered her belongings, Zara distinctly heard Rebecca whisper to another flight attendant, "I don't want her kind up here anyway. First class has standards." The words cut through her like a knife, confirming what she already knew. This wasn't about tickets or seats. It was about her skin color. Now here's a question for you. If you've ever witnessed or experienced discrimination like what Zara is facing, comment number 1 below. If you believe people should stand up against injustice even when it's uncomfortable, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about courage in the face of prejudice. What would you do in Zara's situation? Quietly accept the humiliation or risk missing your life-changing opportunity by fighting back? Let's continue Zara's journey and see how sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't immediate confrontation, but strategic patience. The economy section felt like exile to Zara as she squeezed into the middle seat between two passengers who barely acknowledged her presence. From this position of defeat, she could see Edward Keller comfortably enjoying the first-class service. That should have been hers, accepting a pre-flight champagne with a smug smile that seemed directed at her. Rebecca made several trips through the cabin, each time glancing at Zara with undisguised contempt. During one pass, Zara overheard Rebecca telling another flight attendant, "We need to keep an eye on her. These people can get aggressive when they don't get their way." These people. The casual racism wrapped in professional concern made Zara's skin crawl. She pulled out her laptop, determined to review her MIT presentation despite the cramped conditions. As the plane reached cruising altitude, drink service began. When the cart finally reached Zara's row, the attendant served both passengers beside her but accidentally skipped Zara entirely. When she politely requested a water, the attendant's curt, "We'll come back," never materialized into actual service. An hour into the flight, the plane hit unexpected turbulence. The sudden jolt sent Zara's laptop sliding from her tray table, landing with a clatter in the aisle. Before she could unbuckle her seatbelt to retrieve it, Rebecca appeared, snatching up the MacBook with suspicious speed, as if she'd been watching and waiting for an opportunity. "Whose is this?" she announced loudly, holding the laptop high. Zara raised her hand. "It's mine. It just fell during the turbulence." Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she examined the computer. "This is a very expensive model. Where did you get it?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implication. "It's mine," Zara repeated firmly. "I use it for my engineering projects." Rebecca turned to a white passenger in the row ahead. "Sir, did you perhaps lose track of your laptop?" The man looked confused, but then, noting Rebecca's pointed expression, slowly nodded. I did have mine out earlier," he offered hesitantly. "That's not possible," Zara protested, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That's my laptop. My name is even on the lock screen." Rebecca ignored her, turning the computer on to reveal Zara's MIT application essay draft clearly displayed. Despite this evidence, Rebecca shook her head. "This doesn't prove anything. You could have taken this from someone else's bag while they were in the bathroom." Zara pulled out her student ID from her wallet. "Look, my name is on both my ID and the laptop's user account," but Rebecca had already made up her mind. "Young lady, theft is a serious accusation. We take security very seriously on this airline." The neighboring passengers shifted uncomfortably away from Zara, as if criminality was contagious. The white passenger who had initially backed Rebecca's claim now looked uncomfortable with the escalation, but remained silent. The plane's intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to a security situation on board, we will be making an unscheduled landing in Hartford. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened." A wave of murmurs swept through the cabin as passengers speculated about the nature of the security situation. Zara felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, prejudging, condemning. In that moment, she realized with crystal clarity what her father had tried to warn her about. This wasn't about a laptop or a seating assignment. This was about her very right to exist in spaces others felt she didn't belong. The plane began its descent, and with it, Zara's hopes for her MIT interview seemed to plummet as well. Her future was now in jeopardy because of nothing more than the color of her skin. The unexpected landing at Hartford International Airport brought a tense silence to the cabin. Passengers gripped their armrests as the plane taxied aggressively to a remote area of the airport, where 3 security vehicles waited with flashing lights. Through her window, Zara could see uniformed officers approaching the aircraft with alarming urgency. Her throat tightened. This show of force wasn't for a simple misunderstanding about a laptop. This was the response reserved for terrorists and violent criminals, and somehow she had become classified as a threat. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated while security personnel board the aircraft. This is standard procedure." But there was nothing standard about the 4 heavily armed officers who stormed down the aisle directly toward Zara's row, led by a grim-faced Rebecca and Brian. "That's her," Rebecca declared loudly, pointing dramatically as if identifying a dangerous fugitive rather than a 17-year-old honor student. "Stand up slowly and keep your hands where we can see them," commanded the lead officer, his hand resting on his holster. Bewildered passengers pulled out phones to record the spectacle as Zara complied with quiet dignity. "What's happening?" "I haven't done anything wrong," she asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the terror coursing through her. Brian stepped forward with a rehearsed speech that sounded as if he'd been planning this moment. "This passenger has exhibited aggressive behavior, refused to comply with crew instructions, and is suspected of theft. She's been disruptive throughout the flight and poses a security risk." Each lie landed like a physical blow. Zara opened her mouth to defend herself, but was immediately cut off. "You can explain at the security office," snapped the officer, roughly grabbing her arm. "I'm cooperating," Zara stated clearly for the benefit of the recording phones. "There's no need for physical restraint." Her words were ignored as the officer twisted her arms behind her back and applied handcuffs with unnecessary force. The metal dug painfully into her wrists, immediately breaking the skin. "The cuffs are too tight," she gasped, feeling warm blood trickling down her fingers. "Please loosen them." The officer responded by tightening them further. "Stop resisting," he warned, though she hadn't moved a muscle. Several passengers protested the treatment. "This is excessive," called out an elderly woman. "She's just a kid," shouted another. But their objections were drowned out by Rebecca's continued narrative. "She's been hostile since boarding. We feared for passenger safety." Being marched through the narrow aisle while handcuffed was humiliating enough, but the true degradation came when they paraded Zara through the terminal. Travelers stopped to stare and point at the young black girl in custody, making instant assumptions about her character and actions. Each step felt like walking through fire as she held her head high despite the public shaming. "I need to make a phone call," Zara requested calmly. "I have rights. I'm a minor traveling alone, and I need to contact my parent." "Criminals don't have rights," muttered one officer, just loud enough for her to hear. "You can call your daddy from jail after processing." The casual cruelty stunned her. They didn't see her as a teenager, or even as a person deserving basic dignity. They saw only a threat to be neutralized, a stereotype to be punished. As they approached the security detention area, Zara caught her reflection in a glass partition, blood now staining the sleeve of her carefully chosen interview outfit. Tears threatening but resolutely held back. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Remember who you are, especially when others forget." She straightened her shoulders. Despite the pain, they might control her freedom at this moment, but they wouldn't take her dignity or her truth. The security detention room at Hartford International Airport resembled an interrogation cell from a crime show. Stark white walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, and a single uncomfortable chair facing a two-way mirror. Zara was shoved inside with such force that she stumbled, her balance compromised by the handcuffs still digging into her wrists. The door slammed behind her with finality, leaving her alone with the throbbing pain and growing anxiety about missing her MIT interview. 10 minutes passed in isolated silence before the door swung open again, revealing Security Chief Dennis Reynolds, a bull-like man with close-cropped gray hair and cold eyes that assessed Zara as if she were a criminal specimen rather than a high school student. "Sit down," he barked, dropping a file on the table with theatrical force. Zara complied, wincing as the movement sent fresh pain shooting through her lacerated wrists. "I need medical attention," she stated calmly. "My wrists are bleeding." Reynolds ignored her request entirely, flipping open the file with exaggerated importance. "Quite a performance you put on up there," he said with a smirk. "Theft, intimidation, disruptive behavior, refusing crew instructions. That's enough to put you on the no-fly list permanently, not to mention criminal charges." "None of that happened," Zara replied evenly. "I had a valid first-class ticket that was given to someone else. My laptop fell during turbulence and was falsely claimed as stolen. Everything else is fabrication." Reynolds laughed, the sound entirely without humor. "That's not what the flight crew and witnesses say. We have multiple statements confirming you were belligerent and threatening." He pushed a form across the table. "Sign this confession and we might be able to reduce the charges since you're a juvenile." Zara didn't even glance at the paper. "I won't sign anything that isn't true, and I won't be intimidated into a false confession. I need medical attention and my legal right to contact my father." Blood had now soaked through the cuff of her blazer, dripping onto the metal table. Reynolds' eyes flickered to the blood, then away, unconcerned. "You think you're special, don't you? That the rules don't apply to you?" This attitude is exactly what the flight crew reported. The door opened again, and a younger officer entered, female, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and a nameplate reading Taylor Jackson. She carried a first aid kit and set it on the table. "Sir, protocol requires medical attention for any detainee with visible injuries," she said quietly. Reynolds glared at her but nodded curtly. "Make it quick, Jackson. We have a report to file." As Officer Jackson gently removed the handcuffs and began cleaning Zara's wounds, their eyes met briefly. Something in Jackson's expression suggested she wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation. While Jackson worked, Reynolds aggressively searched through Zara's belongings spread across the table. Her carefully organized notes for the MIT interview, her laptop with engineering designs, her phone, all examined with suspicious scrutiny. When he found her MIT acceptance letter and formal interview invitation, he paused, clearly surprised. "Engineering scholarship interview? This has to be fake," he muttered, though doubt had crept into his voice for the first time. "It's legitimate," Zara said. "I was on my way to an interview for their aerospace engineering program. I need to contact them about this delay. Officer Jackson looked up from bandaging Zara's wrists. Sir, that does appear to be an official MIT letterhead. Reynolds snatched the letter away. Doesn't change the situation. We have multiple witness statements about her behavior. Jackson's lips thinned slightly. Have we reviewed the aircraft security footage yet? She asked. That would clarify what actually happened on board. Reynolds shot her a warning look. That's not necessary. We have reliable witness statements from airline staff. Turning back to Zara, he continued with renewed hostility. You're entitled to one phone call. Make it quick. As he slid her phone across the table, Zara noticed him exchanging a look with Jackson that clearly said, "What damage could one teenager possibly do with a phone call?" If you've ever been in a situation where you were misjudged based solely on your appearance, comment number 1 below. Have you ever witnessed someone in authority abusing their power and felt powerless to stop it? Hit that like button if you believe justice should be blind to color and status. Subscribe to learn what happens when Zara finally makes that one critical phone call. What powerful forces will be unleashed when the truth about her identity is revealed? Would you have remained as composed as Zara in such an unjust situation? Or would you have reacted differently? With steady hands that belied her inner turmoil, Zara dialed her father's number. She hadn't wanted to use his influence, had spent her entire life proving herself on her own merits. But justice now seemed impossible without intervention. Marcus Williams answered on the first ring, his warm voice a lifeline in the sterile detention room. "Dad," Zara said, her composure finally wavering. "I need help." She quickly explained the situation while Reynolds watched with dismissive boredom, clearly expecting a routine parent call that would accomplish nothing. "Put me on speaker," Marcus instructed, his voice shifting from concerned father to executive mode in an instant. Zara complied, placing the phone on the table. "This is Marcus Williams, CEO of Aurora Global Airlines, speaking. To whom am I addressing?" The change in Reynolds' expression would have been comical under different circumstances. Shock, disbelief, and the dawning horror of recognition passing across his face in rapid succession. This is Security Chief Dennis Reynolds, sir," he stammered, his previously domineering posture dissolving as he straightened his uniform frantically. "Chief Reynolds, I understand you've detained my daughter without cause, denied her medical care, and are attempting to coerce a false confession from her. Is this correct?" Marcus's voice filled the small room with authority. "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding. We received reports from flight crew about disruptive behavior." Marcus cut him off. "I've already accessed the airport's security footage remotely and am reviewing it as we speak. I'm also receiving real-time updates about the social media, videos being uploaded by passengers. Should I continue describing what I'm seeing, or would you prefer to correct your understanding of the situation?" Reynolds paled visibly. Officer Jackson, still standing near Zara, failed to suppress a small smile. "Additionally," Marcus continued, "I've initiated Executive Protocol 7 across the Aurora network. All staff involved in this incident are now locked out of our systems pending investigation. I've also spoken with Hartford Airport's director, who is a personal friend. He's very interested in why his security team is detaining the daughter of one of the airport's biggest airline partners without evidence." Reynolds' phone began buzzing incessantly. "Mr. Williams, there appears to have been a serious misunderstanding," he said, sweat now visible on his forehead. "We were simply following procedure based on crew reports." Marcus interrupted again, his voice steel. "I'll be arriving in 20 minutes by helicopter. My daughter is to receive immediate medical attention for her injuries. All personal items are to be returned to her untouched. She is to be moved to the VIP lounge with full amenities until I arrive. Am I understood?" "Yes, sir. Immediately, sir," Reynolds stammered, gesturing frantically for Officer Jackson to help Zara up. "We'll take care of everything right away." But Marcus wasn't finished. "And Chief Reynolds, every second of this incident has been recorded, both on the aircraft and in your detention facility. Every false report, every denial of medical care, every civil rights violation. Don't bother attempting to delete anything. Our systems have already archived it all." The transformation in the security staff was immediate and dramatic. The same officers who had roughly manhandled Zara now treated her with exaggerated care, escorting her to the airport's luxury lounge with profuse apologies. Reynolds disappeared entirely, likely scrambling to contain the damage to his career. Officer Jackson stayed by Zara's side, her previous hesitation now evident as full regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered when they were briefly alone. "I knew something wasn't right about this." Within 15 minutes, the unmistakable sound of helicopter blades cut through the air outside the airport. Marcus Williams had arrived, and the real reckoning was about to begin. Security staff scattered like cockroaches exposed to sudden light, desperately attempting to distance themselves from the unfolding disaster. As Zara watched her father stride purposefully across the tarmac through the lounge window, she felt a complex mixture of relief, vindicating anger, and unexpected sadness. She had wanted to handle this herself, to succeed on her own merits without her father's intervention. But sometimes, she realized, justice required power to face power. And the expression on her father's face made one thing abundantly clear. He was prepared to use every ounce of his considerable influence to right this wrong. Marcus Williams entered the VIP lounge like a controlled storm, his face composed but his eyes blazing with a father's righteous fury. Unlike many powerful executives who shouted to demonstrate authority, Marcus had always been most dangerous when quiet. And he was very quiet now. His first action was to embrace his daughter, examining her bandaged wrists with careful hands. "Medical team is right behind me," he said softly, kissing the top of her head. Then he turned to the airport officials hovering nervously at the door. "Where is Chief Reynolds?" he asked, his voice deceptively mild. The airport director stepped forward, sweating visibly in his pressed uniform. "He's preparing his incident report, Mr. Williams. I can assure you that Hartford International takes these matters very seriously." Marcus cut him off with a raised hand. "What you take seriously is evident from my daughter's treatment. I want Reynolds in this room within 5 minutes, along with flight attendant Rebecca Whitman and purser Brian Mitchell. They should bring any devices they use to record or communicate about this incident." While they waited, a medical team arrived to properly treat Zara's wrists. The airport director's phone buzzed continuously as the situation escalated beyond local control. Aurora Airlines' stock had begun plummeting as videos of Zara's mistreatment went viral across social media platforms. Justice for Zara was already trending nationally, with celebrities and civil rights organizations picking up the story. The incident was rapidly transforming from a local security matter into a national conversation about racial profiling in air travel. Rebecca and Brian arrived first, their previously confident demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. When they spotted Marcus, recognition and fear flashed across their faces. They had clearly never connected Zara Williams with the airline's famously private